So, Bring It On is one of my favorite movies of all time, and over the years, every now and then, I remember a scene and I go look at it, and I always discover something new. And, I watched Bring It On for the first time when I was about 13, and it was well after it came out. So, I did not have that first-hand insight of what people took away from it because, I was a kid. But now, what I can say for sure is that we're most definitely in a different political climate than 20 years ago, and things you wouldn't have noticed before pop out very regularly, and it makes you look at things very differently. So today I just kind of want to talk about why Bring It On is one of the best teen flicks and how relevant it is to this day. Before I get into this video, I just want to put a quick disclaimer. If you tend to get uncomfortable with discussions about politics, race, or class, or just tend to take things personally, please just click off this video because this isn't for you. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, but these topics tend to get people really salty. So honestly, please just click off. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, let's get into it. So, at the surface, Bring It On follows the formula of many teen flicks. Be put in a morally conflicting situation. In some cases, it may be about romance. In other cases, it may just be a sub-storyline. Then through the story, we get to the climactic segment that is often the catalyst to the coming of age of our main characters. And then we usually get a generally agreed upon happy ending, and voila. So at the surface, Bring It On may be just that. A girl who finally gets her chance to become captain and then is faced with a whole new set of obstacles, but then overcomes them and leads her team to a victory, or some may say a semi-victory. And personally, I know so many people who just want to enjoy the movie as that, and I guess that's fine. But then it leads you to think, like, why are so many people still so bothered and uncomfortable to look beyond the surface of this movie and see what it's really about? Whether it be race, class, gender empowerment, and most clearly defined in this movie, cultural appropriation. Then you remember all the bullshit that happened this year, and you're like, yes, because still today in 2020, we have the same problems in society we did 20 years ago, and so on. So today I'm just gonna sit here and break down the important themes that were tackled in this movie and highlight their everlasting relevancy in today's world. So once again, if you get uncomfortable by these topics, just leave, I guess. And yeah, let's get into it.
Okay guys, let's go out there and do our best. Nothing hits the floor, we stick it. Hands in.
The women in this movie are portrayed as being independent and sure of themselves. Even with characters who are maybe not likable, for example, Courtney and Whitney, they still demonstrated confidence in owning who they were. It was nice to see that there were no actual petty backstabbings and that they weren't villainized as shallow mean girls. I mean, granted, they were mean girls on a certain level, but I loved how upfront with Torrance they were. It just showed a more positive side of women being honest and real about their feelings regarding each other while not stooping to certain levels like constantly backstabbing each other. Now, obviously, there's a huge problem with the name calls in this movie, but I mean, what can I say? It's just really reflective of its time. Now, on the other side, you also had Torrance, Missy, and Isis who took leadership and faced their problems head on. With Torrance, she might have faltered a little bit when she followed the advice of her boyfriend to hire a scam artist, but in the end, she decided to stop taking the easy route and decided to work hard, and there were no male saviors in this movie. The movie was great at portraying women being strong and showing that their hard work can and actually deserves a good payoff.
Look, I hate to be predictable, but I don't give a shit. We learned that routine, fair and square. We logged the man hours. Don't punish the squad for Big Red's mistake.
This is something the Torres really struggle with throughout the film. When these guys found out that the routines were stolen, they were kind of like, well, that's too bad, but it's not really our fault, which, fine. Okay, I understand that it's hard to take part of the blame in something you weren't actually aware of. But then later, these same characters now know that the routines were stolen, but still don't seem to mind as much. We hear things like, well, can they prove it? Or we deserve to win. We put in the man hours, and even BS like it's not cheating. It's about winning. And they only decided to stop using the routines when the Clovers retaliated at the football game. So, these kids aren't bad people, but essentially the movie does show that accountability isn't something a lot of people are willing to take when they just don't have to. I mean, I do think that out of all the Torrances, it's clear that Torrance and Missy did try to understand the injustice and actually try to do something about it. And I think essentially the movie shows shows that sometimes the real culprit isn't even the one who has to deal with their wrongdoings. Big Red actually never has to take accountability and even diminishes what she did by calling it borrowing. And in the eyes of the people living in the universe, Big Red was the captain that led the Toros to national championships, while Torrance to some might be seen as the replacement who broke her streak, and that's kind of sad.
It's the curse. What? The spirit stick curse.
So one of the things I noticed earlier on in this movie was that Tori saw herself as a victim and kept referring to herself as cursed. And I mean, to avoid hard work, they hired someone to give them a dance routine for the competition. And can I just say that as soon as they saw those moves, they should have just taken their money back. And not to mention that the dance coach was clearly a lunatic. Unfortunately for them, they weren't the only lazy team and ended up getting caught. Now, given the stature of the Toros, they were given a slap on the wrist and they got a chance to go to national. Now, can you imagine if they decided to do the Clovers routine and both teams performed the same thing at regionals, how that would have went for the Clovers? Case in point that if you're at the top, you're allowed to bend the rules and most people will look away because they won't be able to bring you down anyway. On the other hand, we also have the class of these characters, which ties into their privilege. When Isis and the Clovers are introduced, we can see that they've never gotten an opportunity to show themselves, and later we understand it's because they can't afford to. So here we see how privilege and class can trump the rationale and have full disregard of merit. These Clovers deserve to go to the competition, but they can't, and not for a lack of talent, of course, but a lack of resources, which is the opposite problem of many of the other teams out there.
Guys, every time we get some, here y'all come trying to steal it, putting some blonde hair on it, and calling it something different.
All right, so let's just start by defining cultural appropriation for a second. So by definition, cultural appropriation is the adoption of an element or elements of one's culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. So this can be seen as controversial when members of a dominant culture appropriate from disadvantaged minority cultures. This brings me to why I decided to make this video today. To this day, I still see people attempting cultural appropriation, whether it be on purpose or not, I don't know. But one thing I can say for sure is that not enough people accept the truth and face it when they're doing it. You see, what the Toros were doing was full-on cultural appropriation. Big Red went to minorities who didn't have the means to show their value in their art and took it for herself. And I read an argument once that stated that they weren't appropriating because they weren't being racist about it and that they were just appreciating it. Okay, so here's the deal about appreciating. It's about uplifting the creator. It's giving them credibility and visibility. If you take something from someone without telling them, do you really think they won't think you stole it? Listen, I do think that this is a topic that people don't understand. Well, some people don't understand, and I get that. But the amount of conversations that I've had with people that just keep denying its existence is beyond me. I mean, just a year ago, Kim got into some big trouble because she called her shapewear line kimono, and I just don't understand how, with a team as large as the one she had, everyone just saw that and let it be. And it's one of the many examples from today's pop culture having cases of cultural appropriation.
Not good news.
What are you talking about? They don't go, we win. Once again, we're the best.
I define best as competing against the best there is out there and beating them.
Before I end this video, I do want to touch on one last subject, and this is purely my opinion. The movie Bring It On to Me gained its credibility from two specific creative decisions. The first one being when Tori offered Isis money and she rejected it. Tori's intentions were good, but had Isis accepted it, this movie would have turned into a white savior movie and it would have continued to enable the narrative that people of lesser means can't make it. And the other creative decision is the victory of the Clovers, because had they made the Toros win, the message would have been really different. The victory of the Clovers validated that they were stolen from, and when they got the chance to show what they could do, they won. And with the Toros, it showed that winning second place feels just as good as winning first place when it's deserved. We could see that the characters understood at the end that saying it's all about winning doesn't give any value to what you've done, and hard work pays off. And I love that the movie didn't necessarily have villains. They didn't play on the angry black girls narrative, and they actually put Tori and Isis on the same level with being team captains. Now, this movie isn't perfect. It's riddled with slurs and offensive comments that would never make it past the cutting board in today's climate. But looking back at these movies are a testament to how far we've come today. You can look at these movies and see how things have changed. I mean, we don't live in a perfect world today either, but at least we've moved past ignoring some of the problems in society. Bring It On is a one-of-a-kind movie in its category and tackled important messages that white teen flicks wouldn't have even acknowledged back in the day. And it's interesting and unfortunate to see how relevant the topics addressed in this movie are to this day. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much. Don't hesitate to like and subscribe, and don't hesitate also to leave your thoughts down below. Thank you again for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.